We'll continue from the same chapter where we stopped yesterday. That is chapter 35, Somavara Vrata Mahima. I'll once again read the summarization of what this chapter is all about. This chapter narrates about the Somavara Vrata Mahima and the story of Princess Simantini. It also tells how the mantras forfeit their potency if they are made overt, and that for a woman the vratas are far more beneficial than the mantras. Very good morning. Jai Shri Krishna Guru. Thank you for joining Shri Guru Charitra Satsang. Wishing you all a very happy Wednesday. Om Shri Gurubhyo Namaha, Om Shri Ganeshaya Namaha, Om Shri Saraswataya Namaha, Om Shri Guru Dattatreya Namaha, Om Shri Mahalakshmi Namaha, Guru Brahma, Guru Vishnu, Guru Devo Maheshwaraha, Guru Sakshat Parabrahma, Tasmai Shri Guruve Namaha. Shri Guru Charitra Satsang. So I'll continue where Shri Narasimha Saraswati was explaining to Savitri why she has to perform the Somavara Vrata and what is the Mahima, means greatness about this Vrata. As Shri Narasimha Saraswati dissuaded Savitri from being desirous of taking mantra, the woman pleaded she be taught some Vrata which would be as beneficial as a mantra. Shri Narasimha Saraswati told her about the Somavara Shiva Vrata. He narrated another anecdote to illustrate the beneficial effects of this Vrata. Once upon a time, in the olden days, there lived a king by name Chitravarma and Aryavrata. He was in the line of the great Nala. He was a great devotee of Lord Shiva. He had no children for a long time. At last, a daughter was born to him. She was named Simantini. The king consulted his court astrologers about the future of the princess. They all said she would grow into a very virtuous girl and would have a long life. But at the age of 14 itself, she was likely to become a widow. The king's and queen's hearts were filled with gloom and sorrow at the prospect of their daughter's widowhood. The princess reached the age of 7. The king started searching a suitable alliance for her. Meanwhile, Simantini learned the Somavara Shiva Vrata from Maitrayani, which is believed to confer Mangalya and auspiciousness to women. Mangalya is the I don't know what's the English word. It is a sign or it's a mark for a married woman. She wears, it's called the Mangal Sutra, which only a married woman can wear as a indication that she is married. It is part of our Hindu, our Sanatan Dharma culture and tradition. From that very young age, she started performing this vrata. Vrata means it's kind of a fast and following certain rituals and performing certain pujas, which is prescribed. It has to be done in a particular manner. So in the coming chapters, in fact, Narasimha Saraswati will talk about some of these do's and don'ts, or what is the things that we need to follow, which definitely might not be applicable in today's day and age, but there is certain reason why these rituals have to be followed. She was thereafter married to a young prince by the name Chitrangada, the son of King Indrasena. The marriage was celebrated in all regal pomp. In fact, you know what? In today's day and age, you cannot get married at the age of 7 because it's considered as child marriage. We don't get married that early age. But yes, this was only applicable at that point in time. So we are not even discussing that aspect of getting married early and going through all these things, because that time the need of the hour was very different and to what life is today all about. One day, Prince Chitrangada went to swim in the river Kalindi along with his friends. They There were also his guards attending upon him. The prince was swimming in the stream with his friends. He was suddenly caught in a whirlpool in midstream and sank down. The guards tried to search for him and save him, but to no avail. Simantini said to her father and mother that she would throw herself into the stream and die to join her husband in the other world at least. Her grief was inconsolable. She was all fury against Lord Shiva, as in spite of a devout and strict observance of the Somavara Vrata, he had not protected her at all. Oh my God. You know what? This is a very important lesson which we need to understand. If something happens that is unfavorable according to us, or whatever that we have aspired for, the first one to be blamed is God. This is how it works. We human believe that God is doing something bad for us. He is doing something wrong. But the truth is never understood by us. In fact, I will tell you my own case. My Guruji is very compassionate. He's the greatest mother on this planet Earth. I think we did, not in our last chapter, in previous chapter, where it was mentioned, a Guru is compared to that of his love is compared to that of 1,000 mothers. But that's just a way to say how great a guru is. His love is incomparable to anybody. The love that he shows is universal. His love is unconditional. There are no conditions, and that is the truth. And for me, sometimes when I see my Guruji suffering for others' karma, their wrongdoings, their misdemeanors, I get very angry. And I don't know what to do at that moment in time. I feel there is something unjust happening. What my Guruji is doing is not right. So that is my perspective. That is my way of looking at it. It's my love to him. But am I allowed to get angry? Of course not. Can the gurus ever do anything wrong? No. Can the gods do wrong? Absolutely not. They know what they are doing. They know why they have to go through certain things. But in my perspective, it is unacceptable. In fact, this morning my Krishna Guruji was showing and teaching me a very powerful verse from Bhagavad Gita. In that, Lord Shri Krishna had mentioned that there is none, I don't hate anybody or I don't like anybody. There is none dear to me. Everybody is the same. But as a divine being, he has to take care of his disciples and devotees, especially his devotees. And even if the devotee is committing any kind of a sin, in fact, the God is suffering for their karma. Like the Guru has to suffer for their karma, not the God. When I say God, because the Guru is none other than the Lord Almighty himself. So he suffers for people's karma, his devotees' karma. But that is a part of being divine. In fact, like Jesus Christ had to go on the cross, he had to suffer for his devotees. He did suffer. Peter denied him 3 times. He had predicted and it was mentioned. And similarly, there are a lot of things that happens because it's not just the Guru, but people who are associated with the Guru, they're ardent devotees and disciples. Do you have so much faith in your Guru that you're never going to doubt him? You're never going to call him names. You're never going to say that you're doing something wrong. But it's very difficult. And what makes us say something like that is called the mind. Because in our mind, we have the right and wrong. Like my Krishna Guruji was giving a very beautiful understanding. See, people are ignorant. So they kind of say whatever they feel like. But they are material worldly people, so they don't understand and they are allowed to say what they want to. But he said, having spiritual knowledge, being on the path of spirituality, you are not allowed to react, you are not allowed to say things, you cannot get angry. That is the truth. But just like her grief was inconsolable to me. I cannot see my Krishna Guruji suffering for somebody else. I cannot see him go through that pain. He actually is not going through the pain because he is not the body. See, he understands that bit. But still, when you have the body, if somebody is pinching you or somebody is, if you're getting hurt, it is going to be painful. The body is going to feel the hurt. But being who he is, that supreme self, that Parabrahman, he's not affected. That is the truth. That is who the divine Lord Almighty, as a Guru, he is. But when you see your master going through that, when you see somebody very dear to you, your beloved God suffering as a devotee, it is unbearable for me. And what happened indirectly, I go and fight with him, which is not correct. And even when I fight with him, that also he's suffering for. And that's the real sad part. I don't know how to explain. It's a very difficult thing. When we blame God, the God doesn't do anything. And that is the truth. We are not learning the lessons the God is teaching us. The gurus have taught, yet we end up doing everything according to our mind and whatever we think we want to do using our mind. Why? Because that is the power of Maya, the elusive power of the Lord, where you don't know what hits you. Similarly, like my Krishna Guruji today was teaching me, what happens if this elusive power comes in you in the form of your mind and tells you, look, he's suffering, he's doing all these things, and I'm going to be against that. And then what happens to my devotion? It's lost. It's very easy to fall off that devotion and that faith, but it's very difficult to keep it high and rise above. This is the obstacles that come on the path of any spiritual person who is evolving on the path of spirituality. It is not so easy. Your faith is being tested, your devotion is being tested constantly, and the guru is seeing whether you are able to stand that or not. Are you getting swayed away? Are you getting lost in those objects? What happens to you? The truth is that none of this thing is real. Everything is unreal. It is the illusion that is created by his Maya. It is only to see how you evolve. That is the truth about it. Though you understand, but it is very difficult, because overcoming this body and that mind which doesn't even exist, mind is unreal, but yet it becomes very difficult to overcome. You start looking at that object, your guru, who's in a particular body, and you think he's taking on somebody else's karma and suffering, and that's not a fair thing. And that too for people who are doing all sorts of wrongdoings and evil doings, and all their misdemeanors the guru suffers because he's compassionate. For him there is nobody good and bad, everybody is the same. That is exactly what the truth is. But to live the truth and accept the truth is very difficult. And this is what spirituality is all about. So here, when she is angry with Lord Shiva, it is her belief, look, I worshipped you, I serve you, but here you're doing this to me. Why did you take away my husband? But did God take away anybody? No. In fact, her husband died because of his karma. That body had come with that prarabdha karma. Can anybody escape destiny? Nobody can. But when you are devoted to the divine, he will take care of you. He has better plans for you. So why are you getting carried away and being lost in what is happening? Acceptance to what is very important, and not bothering yourself with the likes and dislikes. And that is the biggest thing that you have to overcome. That's the biggest obstacle, the greatest lesson that you have to live. You cannot sway between the right and wrong, good and bad, evil and whatever, the righteousness. We have all these way of looking and judging at things in life, but that's not how it is. What the divine does is not understood by this human mind, because it's petty. It cannot go beyond a certain point. What can a human mind understand the ways of the divine Lord? It cannot. So what is important? You have to only ceaselessly chant the name of the divine, and with his grace, that illusion will go away. He will remove that illusion off your eyes, off your mind, everything, and you will be able to realize the truth. And that realization is very important. But that can only happen with absolute faith, complete surrender, unconditional pure love, and exclusive devotion unto the lotus feet of Lord Sri Krishna and your Guru Dev, who is then as incarnation of your Lord Sri Krishna himself. Lord Sri Krishna says, I am the very essence of your Guru. Worship him, surrender to him, serve him, and you will attain me. That is the truth. The Guru Sakshat Parabrahma. The Parabrahma is the Guru himself. So cannot doubt. This is all an illusion which the Guru creates to test whether he becomes that Samadeepak, which is eternal light. Whether he is going to attain that or not, no matter what happens, he cannot doubt his Guru. He has to serve. All the disease, that leprosy, is only an illusion. I am talking about the beautiful story about Vedadharma and his student Deepak in chapter 2. So that was an illusion. Similarly, the Guru is going to test all his disciples and devotees to see where they stand. But we have to have that faith and not get swayed away with what is happening at that moment in time. Your anger comes because somebody you love the most, when you see suffering according to you for somebody else who is doing something very bad and horrible. But isn't that a program? It's a part of life. And one thing I know, and I will always live, even in the most toughest times and the worst times, that one lesson which Lord Dattatreya has imparted day one is, please remember, even in the worst situation, in the worst of the possible times, when you are put into the toughest of the tests by your Gurudev, he told me, believe and stand for one thing. Know that everything is happening for the good alone. Just have faith at that moment. Don't lose this faith. This is the lesson that he imparted to me, and I will never forget this. Come what happens, no matter what Maya, comes in my life, I just know my Guruji is holding my hand. I have surrendered unto his lotus feet. He's always there to walk me and show me across. But we should never doubt. This is what happens to a human mind or a human being when we see certain things happening which appears very real in this material world. This entire world itself is an illusion. So, her grief was inconsolable. She was all fury against Lord Shiva, as in spite of her devout and strict observance of the Somavara Vrata, he had not protected her at all. She was being dissuaded by all from doing Sahagamana because Shastras did not approve of Sahagamana for a woman without the dead body of her husband by the side. To add to the misfortune, as the king and the people were steeped in sorrow at the prince's death, one enemy king attacked the kingdom of Indrasena and defeated the latter. Misfortunes never come alone, but they come in a chain, is the old saying. So it was the case with regard to Indrasena, who lost his son as well as his kingdom. When Chitrangada was caught in the whirlpool, he sank down into the depths of the river. The damsels of Nagaloka sighted him and rescued him and took him to their kingdom in the netherworld. It was the kingdom of Takshaka, the great serpent king. The Nagakanyas sprinkled Amrit over the body of Chitrangada, who was lifeless. The Amrit revived him instantly. He was taken to King Takshaka, who received him very kindly. Takshaka was happy to learn that Chitrangada was in the line of descent from the famed King Nala, who happened to be a very dear friend of his in the olden times. Takshaka was very hospitable to him. The prince was looked after very well. The prince found that Takshaka's city was a very rich and beautiful one. After some time, Chitrangada asked Takshaka to permit him to go back to his father. Takshaka gave him a very warm and loving send-off, sent a Naga prince for escort, and also gave him many precious and handsome gifts. The prince and the Naga prince who escorted him emerged out of the waters of the midstream. They swarmed to the bank just at that time. Simantini came to the river for the bath before her vrata, as it happened to be Somavara, that is Monday. Somavara is a Sanskrit word, but even in Kannada, they say Somavara, which refers to as Monday. Although God seemed to have let her down, still she wanted to continue the vrata. What does it tell here? See, no matter what you feel, you cannot give up the faith in the divine Lord Almighty. You might think at that moment something wrong is happening, something bad is happening, but honestly, that is not how it is. Everything is happening for the good alone. This is the lesson which Lord Dattatreya himself imparted to me literally in 2009, 2010. At that time, he told me, just believe, just know that everything is happening for the good. Have that faith. No matter what you go through, whatever your Gurudev puts you through, don't get swayed by it. Stand the faith. Chant his name ceaselessly. He will take you out of it. This was the promise he made to me. This is the conviction that you need to have in your Gurudev. Everything is going to be fine. He's actually walking you through that. All journey and process. That is the Guru Ma. That is the greatness of a Guru and the God. But we cannot see or understand at that moment in time. I'm sorry. Although God seemed to have let her down, still she wanted to continue the vrata. This is what being divine means, devoted means. No matter what happens, you cannot stop worshipping. You cannot stop being, you cannot stop loving your Ishta. You have to continue doing that. No matter what you go through. The prince recognized her as Simantini, the princess who was wedded to him. Her face was clouded with grief. He inquired of her who she was and why she looked so much grief-stricken. Although he had close resemblance to her dead husband, she did not take him to be her husband, as she thought that her husband was lost forever. The maids waiting for the princess narrated to the prince all about her misfortune and how she lost her husband whom she loved so dearly. The stranger, the prince, said that he knew Chitrangada very well and that the latter was quite safe and would return to her soon. After saying thus, the prince, along with the Naga prince, went to his father's kingdom. Already by the time the enemy king was thrown back and Indrasena had got his kingdom back. The king was most delighted at his son's safe return. He sent messengers immediately to Chitravarma to inform him of the happy turn of events and of his son's safe return, and that he, along with his son, was coming over there to this kingdom. The joy of Simantini knew no bounds. Her faith in Lord Shiva and merits of Somavara Vrata were thus vindicated, and she got back her lost husband. What does this story talk about? No matter how difficult tests that comes your way, no matter the toughest of the tests, it's Lord who will make you, cross over. Even before giving you that blessing and all the good things in life, you are going to be tested beyond your measures, beyond any measures. And just the divine want to see how much love and faith you have in the divinity, in your Guru. Are you going to fall for what you see, what is happening around you, or are you going to sail through that? That is exactly what the Guru wants to know. The God wants to know. In fact, just the previous chapter earlier, before to this, I don't remember. In that, Guru Nath says this very beautifully. He said, no matter who comes in the presence of the Guru, whatever their innermost heartfelt desires definitely will get fulfilled and all their grievances will be redressed. But before that, he is going to put them to severe test. It was the similar case with Savitri in that chapter when her husband died. What happened to her? She also got very angry on Narsimha Saraswati and the Guru Nath, and she called him names. But later, when Guru Nath in the guise of sannyasi came and explained to her the truth, she calmed down and then she asked Guru Nath, please now tell me what is the Sri Dharma and what am I supposed to do, and I will go ahead. And once she followed everything and he revived her husband. That is how the divine Lord Almighty's work. The same goes in with everybody. The God is going to put you to severe test to see where you stand, how much faith you and conviction you have in him, how much you love him, how much the divine Lord means to you. And then finally he will remove this Maya and everything will become beautiful. It's meant to be. You have to go through the process, but most important, don't give up the faith. No matter what happens to you, stand still, stand tall. Nothing should shake you. You have to become that Mount Meru and stand that faith, that absolute faith, unflinching faith in your Gurudev. No matter what he puts you through, please remember, everything that he shows you is only his elusive power, Maya. And don't fall for his Maya. Lord's Maya is very strong, very dangerous. Just when you go see certain things and when you perceive certain things, and then it's your own mind's creation, the doubt. The doubt is what Maya will put, and the doubt can destroy anything. In a moment, that doubt will destroy that love that you have on the divine Lord Almighty, that faith that you have in him. It is very easy to fall down, but it is very difficult to rise above. So don't let the Maya win. Let the God win. Let the Krishna within you win. For which, hold on to the lotus feet of your Gurudev. No matter what happens, whether you like, you don't like, whatever you're going through, hold steadfastly. Just hold on to his feet. Ceaselessly chant his name. Magic will happen. This is my conviction. I'm telling you. I've seen through the same thing 12 years. And like my Gurudev said, as I journeyed this year, as this year commenced, he said, this year is very critical for you. I don't know what is going to come about. Yes, lot of things do come about, but it is to see whether this spiritual truth is embedded in my heart or not, within me. Am I able to stand this lesson or not? That is the test that comes in for each one in their own capacity, and to see how much they have journeyed, or still how much more they have to learn and go deeper. And this is an ongoing process. It doesn't stop. Spirituality is like a Athanga Sagar. You have to keep going deeper, 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 deeper every single day. It's a limitless ocean. There is no stop button for that. But everything will become magical. Everything will become beautiful when you have that absolute faith, complete surrender, unconditional pure love, and exclusive devotion unto the lotus feet of your Guru and Lord Shri Krishna. Let me tell you, that is all that you need to have, and your life will be redeemed. And don't worry about anything else. And this is the power of the God. The God is always very kind to everybody. He is benevolent. Nobody can be Lord Shri Krishna because of this reason. No, nobody can become this Guru except the divine beings alone. Guru Sakshat Para Brahma. Nobody can have this heart what the Guru has, because everybody is very self-centered. We are not talking about the fake Gurus in this world who are, who want to run conglomerates, who are materialistically driven. There is no iota of spirituality in them. But the divine Lord Almighty is one who's full of spiritual, yet he will appear as a very ordinary human being. That is who he is. That is called his Maya. That is the, elusive power which he shows you how ordinary, how poor he is. He has nothing in his world, but he's the one who owns this entire universe. He's the king of this universe. He's the eternal king of this universe. And yet, he'll show himself in that very ordinary light. People look at him and say, look at him, this fellow, what does he have? He doesn't have a wealth. He doesn't have anything. Doesn't have a family, nothing. And then he appears to be like, an ordinary human being, just a mortal. But is that so? No. He's the divine Lord Almighty. And who are we judging? What are we judging? Looking at that bodily appearance? Never go by that. That is his Maya, and that is the power of his Maya, and don't fall for that ever. And please remember, he just can, like, it's like a magical world. He can unzip in a second. You will get covered, entangled in his Maya, but don't get into that. See through him with his grace, with the power of your devotion and love. You should break that Maya out of your life. Come what may, ceaselessly chant his name, and you will be able to break that, the veil of Maya. You will be able to overcome and attain him. This is my promise to you. The joy of Simantini knew no bounds. Her faith in Lord Shiva and the merits of Somavara Vrata were thus vindicated, and she had got back her lost husband. Shri Narasimha Saraswati thus impressed on Savitri the Mahima of Somavara Shiva Vrata. He told her that she should observe the Vrata all through her life, and this Vrata meant worship of himself, Shri Narasimha Saraswati only. Because Lord Dattatreya is an essence of all three trinities, that is Brahma, Vishnu and Maheshwara. So when you're worshipping Maheshwara, you're worshipping Lord Narasimha Saraswati, Lord Dattatreya himself. How beautiful is that? Savitri and her husband then offered elaborate worship to Gurunath, performed Samardhana, and with the blessings of Gurunath returned to their hometown, Mahur. The parents of the young man were overwhelmed with joy at the safe return of their son and daughter-in-law, and to see their son restored completely to good health. Their hearts overflowed with gratitude towards Gurunath for the divine mercy which he had showered on the family. So thus ends the 35th chapter of Shri Guru Charitra, describing Simantini Akhyayan. Glory to the all-merciful, the omnipresent and the ever-responsive Gurunath. We end this chapter, so we have 30 more minutes. We'll begin with a new chapter. Chapter 36, Achara Dharma. This chapter describes the plight of the Brahmin woman who went for Parana Bhojana. Gurunath explains to the Brahmin woman and her husband some of the Vedic injunctions. Namdarak was all rapturous and joy listening to the glorious narrative of Guru Leelas from the lips of Siddha Muni. He said he was at a loss to know how he could express his gratitude to Siddha Muni, who had come to him like the rising sun, dispelling his ignorance and filling him with the light of wisdom. He said that his thirst and yearning to hear more and more of the Guru Leelas was insatiably increasing. Siddha Muni, pleased with the yearning of Namdarak, continued his narrative. Gangapur had become a great center of pilgrimage because of Sri Narasimha Saraswati's stay there and his association with the place. Thousands of people from different parts of the country started pouring in daily, seeking Gurunath's darshan and blessings for redress of their afflictions of the body, mind and spirit through his divine grace. Why do they come? Redress of afflictions of mind, body and spirit through his divine grace. In Gangapur, at the time, there lived a Brahmin who was very devout. He never accepted gifts from any. He never used to go to Samardhana, where cooked food, that is Paranna, was fed. He used to maintain himself and his family on dry alms, like cereals offered to him. His wife had a bad temper. She used to tell him every day that he should accept Paranna, which would relieve their troubles to a large extent. Every day, many people used to come to Gangapur and perform Samardhana. At Samardhana, couples are invited for bhojan. At Samardhana, sumptuous feast is given with several preparations and delicacies. The Brahmin's wife felt that her husband's obstinacy was depriving them of proper and even minimal food when it was a plenty around. But the husband was never in an agreeable mood to their going to Samardhana feasts. Once, the woman went to Sri Narasimha Saraswati and requested him to tell her husband to change his mind and to accept invitations to Samardhana Bhojan. To this, Gurunath agreed and prevailed upon the Brahmin to comply with the wishes of his wife once at least. How could anyone disobey Gurunath's command? See, the Gurus have a very unique way to teach or test people, and their methods are beyond this human mind's ken and understanding. So let us see what Gurunath is going to do here. When the Brahmin and his wife went to Samardhana feast, a strange thing happened. The woman had an obnoxious vision of dogs and swine hovering around her plate for food, and she felt a revulsion and nausea to partake of the food, though it was lavishly served and was rich with many delicacies. She got up from her seat and asked her husband also to leave from there all at once and to come out along with her. She, along with her husband, came to Sri Narasimha Saraswati and told him about the repulsive and nauseating vision which she had at the Samardhana gathering. Sri Narasimha Saraswati said that it was very much wrong on her part to have forced her husband through him, that is through Narasimha Saraswati, to change his principle and observances. See, didn't I tell you that Guru's ways of teaching someone is very unique. He will give you that saying, okay, go, please go. You want that? Of course I'll give you. But when you go there, you're not going to like a bit. And like he said, she's very smart. She knows her husband is not going to listen. And what did she do? She went to Gurunath and requested him to do so. But Gurunath's way is very unique. He will use the same thing to, what you think you want and remove that object out of your life. And here exactly what she wanted, he gave her. But the moment it came to her, she couldn't eat that food. And what happened to her? She felt repulsive and she was nauseating. So how can you eat something? And how can you force the Gurunath to, let her husband follow her wish? This is wrong. So even when you go to a Guru, you need to understand what you're seeking. And it is very important. The Guru's ways of doing things are you cannot fathom. It's unfathomable. It's beyond what a human mind can even think, imagine, or believe that this is how it has to be. It's not going to happen. It's not your wishes and fancies, but it is only to the divine will of the Lord how things has to be. So the woman prayed to Gurunath and also her husband that she should be forgiven for what she had done. As the Brahmin was feeling very sorry for having broken his rule, Gurunath told him that he was not to worry about it any longer. No sin would touch him on that account because he did not go on his own will. He only obeyed the command of your Guru. And when you obey the command of your Guru, nothing befalls you. Please remember. So he did not go on his own there, of his own volition. And that in an exceptional cases, Brahmins can accept paranna from others' houses. The Brahmin prayed to Gurunath to enlighten him in which houses one can partake food and in which houses it is to be avoided. Gurunath explained about this in detail as under. So now the Gurunath is going to teach you the do's and don'ts. Let us understand what is doable, what is not doable. There are many disciplines regarding acceptance of food. So one can take food in Guru's house without any hesitation. So where can you eat food without any hesitation? In the Guru's house. When we say it's house, it's wherever the Guru lives, that is his abode. So wherever is your Guru's house, you can partake of the food without hesitation, as also in the maternal uncle's house, in the father-in-law's house, in the houses of brothers, and in the houses of pious people. So it's only told, in connection to this Brahmin. So Gurunath is explaining where he can partake of the food. If there was no Brahmin priest available at the time of Shraddha ceremony, one can attend and take food. But on the next day, he should do Gayatri Japa. Because you're taking on some of these karma and some of the sins accrue at that moment in time. So you have to do Shuddhikaran. And how do you do Shuddhikaran? By doing some of these japas. Here it is mentioned one should do Gayatri Japa. Anyway, food is most holy. It should be taken in the houses of pious and sattvic people, and after taking God's name. Where you should take the food? Food is very auspicious. So it should be taken in the house of pious and sattvic people, and after taking God's name. Homes of evil-minded people are to be avoided. Homes of evil-minded people. See, people are very greedy. They have, hidden intentions, hidden motivations. So you don't know what is going on in their mind. So never go and take food in the homes of evil-minded people. It has to be avoided. Food is not to be accepted from a greedy people who are not doing the duty to their family. Oh my God. Greedy people, never even go there, because for them, they're more greedy. They want more. How much greedy can a man become? So please never go and eat in a house where the people of the house are very greedy in life. No, you cannot go there. And the next is, food is not accepted from people who are not doing the duty to their family. That is very important. You have to, one who is not taking care of their family, even you cannot partake of the food from that place. People who are proud and egoistic, people who indulge always in self-praise and talking ill of others. Okay, this is a very important thing. Like my Krishna Guruji says, we are not here to judge others. So we should not even slander. We should not talk ill about others. But please remember, and when you do so, you cannot have food in such people's house. That's also said. And one who's only praising themselves. People who are ill-tempered. Oh my God, ill-tempered. That's another dangerous thing. My Krishna Guruji will say, do you see yourself here first? So anger is doorway to hell. So he'll say, ill-tempered people, you can't eat there. People of immoral conduct. Somebody, they have lost their moral values, who are always doing all the, who have filled with evil propensity, demonic disposition. You cannot have food over there. And then what? People who are addicted to drinking wine and other intoxicating drinks. You cannot have food in the people's house who are addicted to drinking wine and other intoxicating drinks. This is a very wrong thing. We cannot partake of food in such places, because that is karma. They are committing lot of sins, and we are not going to be part of their karma or their sins. So we will not even, go into such places. Should not even go into such places. People who regularly live on paranna only, etc., which is living out of others, whatever the food is being offered. So you cannot even have food there. If we accept food from such people, their sins will affect us. Why should we not eat is a very important lesson. What is here saying? If we accept food from such people, their sins will affect us. We will actually get into their karma. So we have to stay away. We cannot take other people's sins. They are doing so much wrong. And that is where we cannot go and indulge ourselves in that. Though the food we take, the gunas flow into us. Through the food we take, the gunas flow into us. This is a very powerful lesson what is being mentioned here. Through the food we take, the gunas flow into us. That is why my Krishna Guruji has taught in which from Bhagavad Gita, where Lord Shri Krishna has taught what kind of food do sattvic people eat, rajasic people eat, and tamasic people eat. Because the kind of food you eat, through the food we take, the gunas flow into us. So if you're eating food which is full of sattva, sattvic food, which is simple, the basic sattvic food means which is fresh. It's not stale, it is not 100 years old, it is not pungent, it is not overly spicy, it is not burnt, and it's not too much of non-veg. You can eat, it can be veg or non-veg, doesn't matter, but most important is it has to be fresh. It has to be simple. It should not be overly spicy, too much of oil, too much of masalas. You cannot eat food like that. That is the food eaten by rajasic and tamasic people. So the people in sattva have to eat sweet, like my Krishna Guruji. Even for breakfast, we will definitely have a sweet. That is our culture, and that is sattvic food. And our food should be cooked using ghee, clarified butter, and that has the highest sattva. So Lord Shri Krishna is known for eating, what are the things, everything, the milk products, milk, curd, butter, ghee. He was just loved eating it. Why? Because that has the highest of the sattva. Have you seen some of these Krishna photos, Lord Shri Krishna's as a Bal Gopal? You will see him smeared with butter, eating the butter. And they also call him Laddu Gopal in South India, or even in North India. He has a laddu in his hand. He's always represented with sweet, because that is who he is. He's very sweet being. He's so sweet that you'll completely get lost in him. But to become lost and become so sweet, you have to overcome all your tendencies, vrittis, this anger, all these shadripus in your life. You have to conquer your 6 inner enemies to attain that prema unto the lotus feet of Lord Shri Krishna, to attain that highest level of bhakti, where you will become that sugary sweet person. And once anybody comes in contact with you, they will also get the diabetes. Just a way to say, they will also get influenced with the divine Lord Almighty's love. But it is not so simple. It is not so easy as I have said. It takes a lot of effort and quite a lot of sadhana, and you have go through that process to attain him. He's the ultimate goal that anybody wants to attain, but it is not so easy to attain him. But Lord is very kind. He saves all, even like he says, the sinners. And there's no sinner or there's no somebody who's a good people. But here it is mentioned that what are the different kinds of people exist. People with demonic disposition, they are enough. But the divine Lord Almighty says everything is part of his own creation. But when you know somebody, like there is a snake, there is a scorpion, you just have to stay away. But you cannot lose your good self. You are learning this knowledge. So it is important for you to live this, because you want to evolve spiritually. You want to become a spiritually perfect being. So you have to follow all these things. This does not apply to the world. Those who don't want to grow on the path of spirituality, for them it doesn't matter. They just have to live a righteous life, where they are not going to commit too many sins, or they are not going to go and do something wrong which is going to put them back, sanction them many more lives and get into a karmic debt with anybody. See, this body, whether you like it or not, it is come with its karma. It's the moment you don a body, the body is going to perform karma. So anyway, it's a karmic one, the karmic body that you're living with. So how can you say you're not going to do any karma? It is, whether you like it or not, it is going to happen. But the only thing is, how do you minimize it? How do you not commit too many karmas? How do you stay away from committing karma is what Lord Shri Krishna or any of the gurus teach you. That is why they tell you to become, to do nishkama karma, selfless action. That is why we are not going to indulge in saying anything bad about anybody, talking about someone, judging someone. Let them do what they want. That is their problem, not ours. This is what my Krishna Guruji teaches. But sometimes you get, not sometimes, all the time I get angry seeing my Guruji, suffering for all these people's misdemeanors, who according to me are not the righteous people. They're doing all sorts of wrong things which the Guru has taught that you're not supposed to do, and yet you do. And who's to suffer? The Guru is to suffer. He's suffering for them, and that is a challenge that I have in my life. But I need to also recognize that He's the divine Lord Almighty. Doesn't He know? Of course He knows everything, but that is the part of the life. So the acceptance is what we need to have, whether we like it or not. So the food that you eat matters. So my Krishna Guruji, he has taught us how we have to eat everything in moderation. Oh, the another most important word. It's not that you like something. Oh, I love rasmalai, I'm going to eat 100 rasmalais. No, that's not how it is. You might like whatever you want. You have to eat the meal that comes on your plate, that comes in your plate, and you have to eat in moderation. It's not like I want more just because I want to eat something more because I like it. So there is nothing like and dislike. You have to eat in moderation. And if you see, my Guruji has a very unique way to eat. He will mix everything so that he'll destroy the taste of the food. Why? Because he's not titillating his senses or his palate. He's eating because he has to sustain his body. So we also have to practice. And me, oh my God, I used to be such a finicky person before coming to my Guruji. Today, it's amazing how, sometimes I might say, oh, I don't like this food. That doesn't matter. But I will still eat it. That is what he has made me become. You eat a wholesome meal and you do your regular exercise. You bring your life to a regularity, which is you follow a disciplined life, and eating in time, eating in moderation, doing your exercise, sleeping in time, doing our prayers every day, being devoting the time for God, worship of the Lord. Everything is taught. And when you do all of this, then you live a God-pleasing life. You're empowering to become divine and become sattvic human being. And so he's saying the food that you partake matters because the gunas flow through the kind of food that you eat. That is a pure, cool and enlightened temperament in us. And what does it do? It gives us pure, cool and enlightened temperament in us. When you eat spicy food or overly all this oily, what is it? What the kind of temperament it has? It has a rajasic temperament. And what does the burnt food, stale food give in you? Tamasic temperament, which is lethargy, inertia, all that. For becoming sattvic, you have to eat food that will make you be goodness of heart, which means sweets, simple food, which is not too spicy, but everything in moderation. The Brahmin requested Gurunath to instruct him on Achara Dharma, the code of conduct for Brahmin. Gurunath said that Parasara Smriti laid down in great detail under Achara Samhita, the code of conduct for the Brahmins, who are the spiritual custodians of the community and the society. Does any Brahmin exist today? No, we are talking about Brahmin means knower of Brahma. Where is anybody the knower of Brahma in today's day and age? People are wearing, that they go and get themselves the thread and they'll go and go to Vedic schools and learn by heart the Vedas and then come and make money. That is the kind of Brahmin who exist. They are not here, who are the spiritual custodians of the community and society. Such people don't exist in today's day and age. They're long gone. The Achara Samhita is something like the Bhagavad Gita for the Brahmin. It is so to say like a fifth Veda. It lays down daily disciplines to be strictly observed by a Brahmin from dawn to dusk. The disciplines laid down are as under, and whoever meticulously observes them will attain everything. and will never suffer from any want, nor will he ever be subject to grief. So let us understand what is this Acharya Samhita talking about. What are the disciplines that a Brahmin should follow? Early morning prayers. The Brahmin should rise in the early serene hours of the morning, which is called Brahma Muhurta, between 3:30 to 5 a.m., during which time the sattva quality will be prevalent in the atmosphere. That is why it is very important to wake up early. And one of the things which every ashram, if you see, they will say that you have to wake up between 3:30 and 4 a.m. so that you can do a lot of good things. You can absorb that sattva guna, that qualities that exist in the sattvic guna, and you can feel that the most beautiful temperament, the goodness, the purity, everything at that moment in time. So you have to use the time to contemplate, to meditate, to do something very powerful and useful for your own development, especially for development in the spiritual world, during which time the sattva quality will be prevalent in the atmosphere. As soon as one rises from the bed, he should remember his guru first and offer mentally his obeisance to him. Who do you need to remember first? You have to remember your guru first and offer mentally his obeisance to him. He should then offer his obeisance to God and the deities, that is the Trimurtis, the sun god, the Navagrahas, etc. Then to the sages, the Pitri Devatas, and to the parents. He should not let the mind wander away. He will have to dwell his thoughts on Guru and God only for some time at least. He is advised to have first the darshan of a cow, Gomata, before he does anything. See, this is a very beautiful. It's not only for Brahmins, even in Krishna Ashram. My Guruji has always taught us that we have to be up by 4 a.m. My Guruji is though awake at 3 o'clock only he's awake. He hardly sleeps. And then 4 o'clock at least we have to wake up and we have to sit in contemplation of God. We have to at least meditate for some time, being lost in the divine. That is the time for your spiritual development, because sattva quality is in the atmosphere. And then you think about the good things, the good thoughts, not about your mind coming in and thinking all sorts of wrong things. If you want to become spiritually perfect, you have to do this. See, this is prescribed for a Brahmin, but this also matters to the spiritual people, those who are seeking spirituality and want to evolve on the path. You have to do some of these things. What should you do first? The moment you rise from your bed, you should remember your Guru first and offer mentally obeisance to him. And then he should then offer his obeisance to God and deities, Trimurtis, the sun god, the Navagrahas, etc. Then to the sages, the Pitri Devtas, and to the parents. He should not let the mind wander away. He will have to dwell his thoughts on Guru and God only for some time at least. He is advised to have first the darshan of cow, Gomata. We worship cow, so you have to have the first darshan of cow. See, nowadays you can't go and search for a cow, because see, we are talking about people living in the ashrams where you have a goshala. There is a cow shed, and you can just go to there and have the darshan of the cow, because cow signifies actually Lord Shri Krishna, if you know, because it's like Golok. So which world? Lord Shri Krishna comes from Goloka Vrindavan. So Golok. So Lord Shri Krishna's representation is also cow. And also we say cow itself is Kamadhenu. So we worship this cow. It's a very powerful thing to worship cow. And in fact, in one of my not articles, is a kind of a post I had written about why we have to worship cow. Why is in our dharma, that is Sanatan Dharma, we are to worship cow. Cow has the highest representation of Lord Shri Krishna in our world. So I will give you a small gist about it later, but now let us continue. So before he does anything else, and also it's said the first when you step out, when you first visit when you see the cow, you have to have the darshan of the cow and then only go. Everything will happen auspiciously. And actually, this is something I will completely stand by. I have followed this for many years. When I used to go to work, I first would like to see a cow coming, in front of me. In Bangalore, you can still see some of these cows walking, on the roads, on the streets. And for me, it was like, oh God, as I step out to go to office, when I would see the cow, it's like, it's very happy moment because, oh, my day will go good. That is our faith. Because the first darshan you're having of the Divine Lord Almighty through Gomata. Achamana. After offering obeisance to the cow, he should gargle his mouth and then do Achamana by sipping in a little water. Achamana is to be practiced many times during the day. If there is no water available for Achamana, if he just touches his right ear, that is said to be sufficient. The right ear is said to be the seat of Agni, fire god, Varuna, god of seas and the air, Surya, Chandra and the other deities. Achamana is to be done at the time of taking food and while retiring to bed also. Achamana is believed to endow longevity as well as good health. Achamana is to be done taking the Guru's or God's name and chanting the appropriate mantras. This is again a very beautiful thing. Yes, we don't do Achamana, but at least in Krishna Ashram, we will follow that my Guruji is first served. Only after my Guruji partakes of the food we will all start. And by chance, if I am outside and if there is nobody else around, my Guru is not there and I have to partake of food, we'll just take a morsel of food and say Krishna Arpanam and then only eat. So you first offer to the divine, that is your Guru and your God, and then only you partake of the food. That's a very important way to practice how you partake of a food as well. Swadhyaya or Vedic chant meditation. Till sunrise and before he goes out for his morning ablutions, he will have to devote either to chanting of prayers, recital of Vedic mantras or meditation. So it's very important why you have to meditate in the morning, whether you chant the mantra or do something but take the name of the Lord, at least early morning hours, it is extremely important. Morning ablutions. After dawn, one should attend to the calls of nature. At that time, he should keep silent. He should then clean his mouth and teeth. The twigs of the trees which are to be used for cleaning the teeth are listed. After this, one should take his bath. It cleanses and refreshes the body and drives away laziness. It endows strength, longevity, intellectual brilliance, etc. It cleanses away the effect of bad dreams and also drives away poverty and all illnesses that you might have. Wow, so this is so important. Morning ablutions after dawn. One should attend to calls of nature. At that time, he should keep the mind silent. What are you supposed to be silent about? The mind, it's not the mouth. Why should we be silent? What people have this dirty habit of spending at least 20 minutes to 30 minutes sitting in the toilet seat and doing what? They're thinking about all sorts of things. Where are you even being quiet? You're not even practicing to keep your mind quiet. And the mind will come very strong, especially when you're sitting on your toilet seat. Because that is where the thinking process happens. And your mind is just talking dime a dozen. Or some people have the dirty habit of carrying their phone to the toilet and sitting and reading their news. Yeah, you can say that's more efficient. You're not at least dwelling in the mind. Of course, yes. But please, what is being mentioned here at that time? He should keep silent. Shut your mind and shut your mouth. He should then clean his mouth and teeth, the twigs of the trees. In olden times, they used to use the neem tree, the twigs of the neem tree, which is supposed to be very strong, healthy. It's very bitter, but I don't know how people used to do that. Yeah, I think that's why they have all very strong teeth. So this is our very organic way of doing things. We didn't have any toothbrush, and that's all plastic. And plastic is dangerous. We are destroying our environment. So try and be as organic and as natural as possible. The twigs of the trees which are to be used for cleaning the teeth are listed. After this, one should take the bath. It cleanses and refreshes the body and drives away laziness. See, having a bath in the morning is extremely important. I've seen people who will not even bath till midday. Unless until they have to go to office, they will not even care to take their bath, because for them they have to sit with the same dirty clothes in the same, that you have woken up and you're just sitting there and you're trying to do your work and having coffee, and then they'll say go for bath in the afternoon whenever they feel like. There is no discipline followed. Why should you do is what is being mentioned here. So early morning bath is very important. So you become fresh. What it says, it endows strength, longevity, intellectual brilliance, etc. It cleanses away the effect of bad dreams and also drives away poverty and all illness. Whatever ills that you have, illnesses that you have, it will drive away. So that purity is extremely important. So having a bath in the morning is very, very important. Nobody has taught us why we have to do certain things. Yeah, we have followed from our family certain way, but today all these things have gone out of the window. You see the millennials, they'll wake up only at 11 o'clock and then straight away, they'll have brunch. It's called brunch, your breakfast and lunch together, and then they'll get into the job. Bath we'll see whenever we feel like. This is tamasic yoga. You can't do that. So you want to become good, you want to be doing something in your world and becoming, living hale and hearty, and want to achieve, everything that you want to do in this world. You have to first have strength. And how do you get strength and longevity and intellectual brilliance? Is by following some of these disciplines. We're at the end of the hour, so we'll stop here today and we'll continue tomorrow at the same time. I hope you enjoyed today's lesson. Thank you for joining Shri Guru Charitra Satsang. Om Shri Mahaganapate Namaha. Om Shri Gurudev Datta. Om Shri Sachidananda Sadguru Sainath Maharaj Ki Jai. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Digambara Digambara Shripad Vallabha Digambara. Om Shri Krishna Gurunath Natha Shri Guruve Namaha. Om Devi Durgaya Namaha. Om Shri Krishna Arpanam Namastu. Krishnam Vande Jagat Guru.